This is a fish mapping preview for Simrad and Lowrance customers, and we say preview because Simrad and Lowrance have yet to implement or update the software necessary for getting fish mapping. So we're going to talk about what it will look like. This user interface may change slightly between now and the time they launch the software for fish mapping, but for all intents and purposes, it should be fairly similar, and the functionality should be really similar as well. So we're going to walk down through all the features of the new fish mapping service. And we don't, just to be clear too, we don't have a real clear date on the launch of the software necessary for fish mapping, but as the weeks pass, we should have a much clearer indication of that soon. All right, so I'm Jeff Leach with SiriusXM Marine, based out of the Washington, D.C. office. Also on the call is Dan Dickerson. Dan's also based out of the DC office and works with marine and aviation. And we're fortunate to have Chris Trossett on the call with us. Chris is out of Key West and is with Real Fly Charters, runs a charter company and is out on the water on a regular basis. All right, so let's go ahead and dive in here. What makes SiriusXM Marine different? This is up-to-date information. So you see it directly on your MFDs, directly on your chart plotters, and it's complete coverage via satellite. So it's not an app, it's not available online, and it's not limited to the range of cellular networks. So if you look at the map of the United States on the right-hand side of this screen here, and you look at that light blue area that circles the entire United States, North America area, you'll notice that it goes roughly out about 150 to 200 miles offshore, and that is our coverage area. So within that area, you will be receiving satellite signal. Most of us who are out on the ocean fishing offshore, depending on where you are, after about 6 miles, some cases 8 to 10 miles, you completely lose all cell signal. And so this isn't contingent on that. It comes directly to your boat via satellite.
Okay. Thanks everyone for joining. I'm Dan, and as Jeff mentioned, I'll be tagging along tonight and giving you some of the features. This is the home screen of a Simrad plotter, which is what we're using throughout the seminar. Simrad and Lowrance screens are very similar, but if anybody has any specific questions, we'll give you ample time to ask about any nuances that you may see that may be different. So if you're subscribed to SiriusXM, this is going to be your home screen. And before we talk about the new stuff, we just like to talk about our current product, which is SiriusXM Weather, that is currently available. And this is an example of what it looks like. I've taken a shot here from off the coast of Florida. You can see we overlay storm information on top of your charts, individual cell details, which is what those are. Wind information, so we're getting wind speed and direction out of these symbols. And lightning strike information. So very important pieces of weather to have handy and delivered right to your boat. We also do supply sea surface temperature information as part of our regular weather service. The coastal service has sea surface temperature out to 20 nautical miles, and then on offshore, our offshore package gives you sea surface temperature out as far as we have coverage. And this is an example of what you see as the temperature. Gives you the information as a color, and then there's a legend you can bring up, and any place you put the cursor on the screen, it's going to give you your sea surface temperature down in the information box in the lower left-hand corner. So that's the weather information. And going back to the home screen, if you're going to be getting our fish mapping service, this part's going to look the same. You're going to click on the chart button. This is where all the SiriusXM layers are located. And you're going to start right at the base map. And if you press the menu button up here at the top, it's going to bring up the menu on the side. Right now, the overlay is turned off. So what we do is we go into the overlay section, and now we have a new choice, SiriusXM Fish Mapping. Select Fish Mapping, and it's going to take you back to the menu screen. And now we have Fish Mapping turned on, and we have Fish Mapping options. So we're going to dive into these options. selecting those, the first thing you're going to get is this next submenu, View, Animate, Legend. I went ahead and turned the legend on, so we're getting information coming up over here on the side. And now we're going to select View. So these are the new features that are part of fish mapping: fishing recommendations, weed lines, sea surface temperature fronts, sea surface temperature contours, plankton front, plankton contours, height anomaly, and subsurface temps. So we'll start with fishing recommendations. With fishing recommendations, there will be a set of species of fish, and you can select particular species that you may want to have more information about. We've teamed up with a company that has a team of oceanographers, and they basically look at conditions like salinity, plankton, water temperature. They have a long set of parameters for each species, and if the parameters match for a specific species, then we're going to give you this recommendation on screen. It's going to be a shaded area, and the selection you have turned on will show up. There'll be a color match, so we can see the recommended areas for billfish, recommended areas for wahoo, recommended areas for mahi, etc. This is what fishing recommendations looks like. Now, there's not always going to be recommendations for all area. Again, it's a set of parameters. If the parameters are not met, then we won't recommend the information for that area. And these recommendations are based on science. They're not based on catch reports. This is basically a prediction of where we think it's likely that you will find these particular species. Next category, weed lines. And so I've turned on, checked the box, so the weed lines are showing up, and these small magenta colored dots are weeds. We are able to see weeds from satellite. So next slide, I'm going to go here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, nice and tight. We're down on a 20-mile scale here. So you can figure, you know, this might be a spot about 1 mile across. And the weed information is based by looking at the reflectivity of the water. This is how we can determine that we've got the company we partnered with has a software algorithm. They're looking at satellite imagery, and their software is determining from the reflectivity where the weeds are suspected to be, and then manually they're going in and looking at this, and they're outlining the areas where the weeds are. So there's human interaction saying there are weeds in these locations. And so that's not, the weeds might not be shaped exactly like you see here, but location-wise, that's where they were determined to be when the satellite made the pass. Now, because it is satellite-based and because clouds can interfere and because other conditions affect weeds, we're not only going to show you what the weeds are for the current day, and if you look down here in the corner, it says current. If I flip on the animation feature that you see over here, then it's going to play a loop for you and show you what the weeds have been doing for the past 2 days. So you're going to see 2 days ago, and you can see very faintly the weeds are over here. Oops. 1 day ago, the weeds are here. So that's 2 days ago, 1 day ago. I keep going the wrong way on this, and that's today's. So it's going to give you current information, a little bit darker, so you can tell these are where you should be looking today, but you can also see where they were the day before. So that's how they've been moving. And you can see there's a couple little spots that disappear completely as we get into today. Those are weeds that have broken up or drifted off or are no longer big enough for us to see from satellite. So that's what the weed imagery looks like. And that information is updated daily. Every morning by the time you're heading out, you should have fresh weed information.
And I would just say to Dan here regarding weeds that obviously the ocean's always moving, and you definitely have to put your thinking cap on a bit and think, okay, where could the current or wind or waves have moved these waves from the time that they're updated? So something to think about. You know, the ocean's a big open thing.
Yeah, having this animation on your chart, it definitely simplifies it. I'm down in Key West, and we're fishing the Gulf Stream usually, and that water could be moving 3-4 knots. So those weeds could move, 10, 15 miles in a day. So it's nice to be able to see that, have it, an actual picture of it to to help you find where you need to be that day.
Great. All right, so we're going to pause there. If there's any questions, I think there was one about the WM4. Let's see, where was that? Yeah, we'll talk about the WM4 later and what you need to get fish mapping. You will need the WM4. We'll talk about when that comes out. Let's see. I don't see any other questions. If you guys do have questions as we're going through this, if questions pop up, we will pause 2 more times, I believe, maybe even 3 more times for questions. So anything that comes to the top of your mind related to the slides that you're seeing, feel free to send us a message, a chat, and we will answer it. All right, so now we're going to dig into the next feature, which is sea surface temperature fronts. Sea surface temperature fronts have a scale. So the scale is from 1 to 4. So on these lines, you will see number 1 through a number 4. Number 1 represents a weak front, all the way up to number 4, and that's a very strong front. You can see the grading scale on the left-hand side and the legend as well, 1 being less dense or less dark, and then the gradient changes all the way to 4, and that really dark shows you that it's a very strong front. Of course, you can always click on the screen, and in this particular case, you can see the cursor that's right on that 4 line, and you're seeing down below, it says very strong front. So you're looking for areas where the sea surface temperatures have the greatest difference from one section to the next. So this is a very strong break. And obviously for offshore fishermen, always looking for strong sea surface temp breaks. Chris, anything to add how you use sea surface temp breaks on the Keys?
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly what we're looking for on a day-to-day basis. Like I was saying, we're always fishing the Gulf Stream, and this is going to show you right where the edge is, and just simplifies it for you. You don't have to adjust your temperature range. It's already been done for you.
You're going to see a lot of these images over the next few minutes. We're taken right off the Outer Banks, and that is actually the Gulf Stream. And these screenshots have just been taken within the last week and a half or so as I've been preparing this seminar.
All right, next we're going to talk about sea surface temperature contours. So the way these are displayed, we'll see on the next screen here, or actually we're going to first talk about how they're enabled. So if you click on the enabled button, you have the option to change your range from a maximum value to a minimum value. So in this particular screen, if we look at the legend on the far left-hand side of the screen, we're looking at a temperature range between 76 degree as the maximum and 58 as the minimum. So then if you go to the screen itself, you'll see there's the minimum where the cursor is, 58, and the maximum 76. So you have the option to dial these temperatures in to your liking. We all know that certain fish species like certain temperatures, and you want to see exactly where those temperatures are within that range. So this screen just shows you the option to use that slider bar. And in this case, we're adjusting the maximum value down to 74 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah, I'll take it up 1 minute. You'll see there's a 76 degree temperature line right there. And then as we've adjusted the temperature down, now that's no longer visible.
Great. Yep, and there's 70, the minimum value now is 70. So the range in this particular slide is much tighter. It's between 70 and 74 degrees. And then you can see the gradient changes. So at 70 degrees at the very bottom, you're looking at a less dark or lighter color. And then at 74, it's much darker. So you can see how that coincides right there on the, applies right there on the screen. 70 are light contours, 74 is a much stronger contour. Or darker contour, I should say. All right, next is plankton fronts. So again, if we go to the next slide, we'll show you plankton fronts. And these, again, are in a scale of 1 to 4, 1 being a very weak front and 4 being a very strong front. Again, they also have color gradients. And so in this particular case, you put the cursor on the number 3 in this case, and it's a strong front. You can see that down in the bottom readout there. So you're looking in this case for that nutrient-rich plankton filled water where it breaks up, or it's right not breaks up, but is right next to a less dense front. So this is a very strong front, which is the 4. So you're looking for those 3s and 4s for those strongest fronts. Okay, also we have Plankton Contours. Plankton Contours is a measurement of plankton density. So this is milligrams per cubic meter. And again, going back to that scale, you can see that 0 or very, very little plankton is light colored. And then as you get denser, 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 it gets darker and darker and darker. And of course, you can see the numbers too of the density. And again, that's milligrams per cubic meter of plankton concentrations. All right, do we have some questions come in here? Don't see any questions yet. We are going to get to the WM4 overview discussion, so stand by for that. I know a lot of people are really looking forward to the WM4 being for sale. All right, let's keep rolling right along, Dan.
Okay, so next thing we're going to talk about is height anomaly. A lot of people refer to these as upwellings and downwellings. So we've gone to the next screen, and I'll just back up a minute. When you see some of these menus, there's just a checkbox that'll overlay the data on the screen, and then sometimes you'll see there's an arrow, and that means you have to tap on this to go to the next level, which is what we're doing here, and that brings up where you turn the feature off and on. And we'll show you how you can turn on multiple features here in a minute. So in this case, I've enabled the upwellings and downwellings. At this zoom level, it doesn't look very interesting, but we'll take it to the next level. You'll notice we have a maximum and a minimum value here. So we've zoomed in, and now what we're seeing are, right here it says 15. That would be a 15-inch upwelling. Over here we have a -15, so that would be a 15 centimeter, not inch, excuse me, centimeter downwelling. Those of you that are not familiar with this, sea height has an average level similar to tides, but on the open ocean, they're referred to as upwellings and downwellings. Basically, there are different forces at play that cause the sea level to vary ever so slightly. And when it does, when it goes down, it's like flushing a toilet. It takes all the nutrients with it. So there's not going to be much activity there. There's not going to be much bait there, et cetera. Probably not a very good place to catch fish. You know, we've all been out on days, gone to our favorite spot and not caught anything and wondered why. Might have been because that day there was a downwelling occurring at that location. Conversely, on an upwelling, as the level rises, it brings all the nutrients up with it and is a much more productive fishing spot typically. Also, in between the two areas, can be a good place because that when you have down on one side and up on the other, it creates what we call a vertical current shaft. So there's a lot of water movement in that area. Some people refer to it as they'll see a rip in that area. That could be the source of an upwelling or downwelling. So this is the upwelling and downwelling, and with the Simrad Lowrance units, you're able to adjust the values. So I'll give you an example. What you can do here is we just turned off the downwellings. We don't care about them. We only are interested in upwellings. Then you can set the minimum value to 0, and now so we're only seeing the upwelling information. Chris, do you have any thoughts on upwellings or downwellings?
Yeah, definitely being able to adjust these is pretty helpful, just to save the confusion of where you want to be. Just keeping those upwellings up.
Okay. So next, subsurface temperatures. Not only are we now able to provide you with sea surface temperature information sea surface temperature information, but subsurface. So it's something that you can turn on, and again, it looks like the temperature contours, and you can actually go in and adjust the temperatures so you can look for a specific range just like you can with surface temperature. But here's an example that I took off the coast of Delaware, New Jersey area. And just to give you a little further information on this, this is I took 2 screenshots, the same. You'll notice the cursor is at the exact same position. And over here we have surface temperature, and over here we have subsurface temperature. So you can see that the surface is at 58 to 60 degrees, and down here 10 degrees warmer below the surface. Again, that's the Gulf Stream that's coming up the coast right now. That's that subsurface temperature. I don't know why. Maybe it was a windy day or something. Maybe it rained. Something cooled off the surface, and yet the subsurface at 100 feet down was 10 degrees warmer.
This is going to be a really good tool, I think, for all the South Florida guys and even up in the Gulf. I know in the summertime in Key West, I look at my sea surface charts and everything looks the same. There's very little difference because the water's so hot everywhere. You know, the inshore water is the same temperature as the Gulf Stream. So being able to look underneath it, and you'll be able to keep better track of where you need to be.
Yeah, it seems like I've talked to a lot of people in the Gulf, and they're pretty excited about this. Okay, a little bit about the company that we're working with. The name is Maxar. You may have seen their name in the news. They are a publicly traded company. They have some of their own satellites, and they also have access to all the government satellites. And they have a team of oceanographers, and they've been providing fishing the commercial industry, and I'm talking longliners, purse seiners, that type of thing. They've been providing them with fishing recommendations for several years. And we basically partnered with them and got them to tailor what they do for the recreational fishermen. So this is not something new that we're pulling out of our hat. This is tried and true technology with the company that we've partnered with. Another reason you may know them, they provide Google Earth with their satellite imagery. So that's the background information on who we're working with to get this information. A little bit more about update times. I mentioned earlier, sea surface temperature, surface temperature. We are now able to provide updates every 3 hours, thanks to some new technology that's come into place. This time last year, it was 6 hours. So now we're down to 3 on surface temperature updates. And that applies both to our traditional weather temperature found in the offshore package and the new sea surface temperature contours. The sea surface temperature fronts and the 30-meter subsurface temps are updated daily, as are plankton, height anomaly, and weed lines. So those updates are all set to come out in the morning. We try and get them to you just as you're leaving the dock, so to speak. So you'll have it when you're out there. And then lastly, the fishing recommendations. These take a lot of work. Again, the oceanographers are very involved studying all the data. So they are released twice a week. You're going to have them on Tuesday morning and Friday morning.
All right. And one of the goals that we have, Dan mentioned earlier, that occasionally, if the recipe isn't right for our oceanographers and they're not seeing the exact conditions they want to see for a species to be recommended offshore, occasionally, you will not see any recommendations offshore. So what we're doing here, we really want to teach you how to put your own oceanographer hat on and extrapolate this data. And here's a perfect example of that. So we're looking at red lines, which are sea surface temperature fronts. Remember, these are graded from a scale of 1 to 4, 1 being weak, 4 being very strong. And then we're also looking at plankton fronts. Plankton, again, scale 1 to 4, 1 being weak, 4 being very strong. You're looking for the place where those two overlap, or coincide. So where a 3 and a 4 come together on both plankton and sea surface temperature fronts is typically a much more probable or likely area to catch fish. And for the sake of example, in this particular slide, you'll see that all of these fishing recommendations happen to overlap right with that plankton front and sea surface temperature front. So this is just a really good slide to show you what you're looking for. And again, if you did not see any fishing recommendations in your area, you at least want to look for the strong, very strong 3s and 4s plankton and sea surface temperature fronts.
Yeah, or if there's none, just if there's a 1, it's even a 1's going to be better than none.
All right, and here is a combo shot of the plankton front strength with sea surface height anomaly, so the upwelling and the downwelling. So you're seeing a green 3 here, which means it's a very strong front. And then you're seeing a 5 centimeter upwelling in the exact same spot. So you're just using the data to the best of your abilities with all the tools that you have and trying to make your decision. And what we've found so far is that people will do their homework. They have their favorite fishing spots. They'll plan the night before, but when they get to the boat, they turn on fish mapping and they say, okay, is there a spot I really need to be thinking about? And then they can plan accordingly in the morning. We've had people, and Chris, this may apply to you or not, I'm not sure, but we've had people make go, no to go decisions in the middle of tournaments and say, you know what, I was going to go north with everybody else, but I'm going south because I'm seeing a real strong break, sea surface temperature break in this particular spot. And they'll go to that spot and have had some good success doing that.
Yeah, this is the kind of stuff that, I mean, I've really been waiting for a while. You know, like you said earlier, the ocean is constantly moving, and it's moving fast too. You know, that Gulf Stream's moving 3-4 knots. So things can change throughout the day. Things can change overnight. It's nice to have this on the water that day so you can make the best decisions.
All right, we're going to pause for questions. There was some questions about the hardware that you need, compatible hardware or chart plotters that you need for the new WM4 receiver. Once the WM4 receiver comes out, which is happening soon, we on our website will have an entire list of compatible plotters, as well as Simrad website will show all the compatible receivers. And that way you can figure out if yours works. There's also a question about 30-meter subsurface temperatures, and these subsurface temperatures as far as where they come from, and they're generated based on dynamic models that use remotely sensed satellite data and send measurements to us. And again, as Dan mentioned, that information is updated daily.
Yeah, it's nothing new. This is something one of the in articles that I read when I was first researching what this was myself was that this has been in use for about 30 years. So they've gotten pretty good at you know, figuring out what that subsurface temperature is.
All right, let's keep going.
Okay, so hardware required. You're going to need the new WM4 in order to be able to receive fish mapping. The WM3 does not have the capable technology to decipher the fish mapping information. So you would need a WM4. It's certainly compatible with most of the plotters on the market today, the Evo 3s and the HDS Live. As Jeff mentioned, compatibility for slightly older units. We'll have that up and available for you to access as soon as the WM4 is officially launched here in the near future. From what I've seen from Lowrance Simrad so far, the most receivers that work with the WM3 will work with WM4, and most of them will have the fish mapping capability. There will be require a MFD update, but again, more details to follow on that very soon. Best news of all is price has come down. The predecessor to the WM4 was at about $800, and we're down to $449 at the manufacturer's suggested list price, and then SiriusXM is kicking in a $100 rebate, so you're starting at $349 before you even negotiate for your best price. And in addition to the $100 rebate, you're going to get your first month of fish mapping free. So that's another $100 value right there. And we have a special number here you can call for your free trial. We'll have that number again at the end of the webinar. And also you'll be emailed this link information. You'll be able to get that number from us down the road as well. The fish mapping package itself is going to sell for $99.99 per month, and this is a superset. This includes all of the SiriusXM weather information in addition to the fish mapping information. So if you've already had our offshore package, you're an avid fisherman and you've been using our offshore package, you've been paying about $60 a month. So this is a $40 upgrade to bring in all the fish mapping services. And again, this is a fixed cost. When you pay that $99 a month, you're going to get all the fish mapping information for the entire SiriusXM coverage area. It's not regionalized, so you're not having to pay for specific regions, one-time cost. Also, you don't have to pay for it year-round if you're not using the service year-round. We do have our seasonal suspend program. You can stop your service for up to 6 months and not be billed. For example, if you're putting your boat on the hard for the winter, by all means call us and suspend. Or if there's 2 months out of the year storm season, you're not going to run offshore, you can suspend for those 2 months. You can also upgrade and downgrade between packages. So if you're only fishing hard offshore for 2 months out of the year, upgrade to fish mapping for those 2 months. The remainder of the year, you could go for the $35 or the $60 packages, whatever best suits your boating habits.
All right, we did want to bring to everybody's attention that we are supporting a company called Dolphin Research Project, otherwise known as the DRP. A Dolphin Research Program has been around since 2002. And as of right now, they've tagged and released almost 30,000 mahi and recaptured. Of those tagged, about 700 have been recaptured. And DRP is the world's biggest dolphin research organization. And that they're literally charting the migratory nature of dolphin and their vertical movement up and down the Atlantic Ocean. So this program, we all think of mahi, all of us that are offshore anglers, as just a ubiquitous species that's, you know, out there for everybody and don't really think about how much we take. But it's important that this species is being researched, and I think by tagging, the DRP is getting critical information necessary for the sustainability of this particular species. So we're encouraging everybody to be a part of this and tag while you're out there for those mahi after you've met your limit, or the smaller mahi, or the ones that you just don't want to keep. Your freezer's already full with mahi. And it's simple, it's free, it's easy to do. And you can request a free tagging kit by visiting dolphintagging.com/tags. So fairly straightforward. All right, next, super useful resources for you. We want all of our customers to fully understand what they're looking at on their screens, and whether that's weather or fish mapping, we know that it is not immediately intuitive. Sometimes it takes a long time. We have customers that have been with us for 10 years who don't even understand all the features and functionality that they have at their fingertips. So with that in mind, we have multiple resources for you. First and foremost, the fish mapping website, which is SiriusXM.com/fish mapping. We have a video library where we have literally taken individual tabs by manufacturer of weather receiver and plotter and provided videos specifically by manufacturer, and that's SiriusXM.com/marine library. And then a very healthy YouTube channel that is growing daily, and we will be updating even more videos here in the next week or two in the YouTube channel, and that's youtube.com/SXM Marine. Also encourage you to follow us on social media and see what is new with us and interact. A couple resources for you if anybody on this call has tech issues, if you need support setting up your system, if you have a specific question about SiriusXM Marine and your service, or how you connect it, marine.support@SiriusXM.com. Or if you have a specific Simrad related question, you can always reach out to their tech people too. That's simrad.tech@navico.com. So in a nutshell, that is fish mapping. Again, we can't tell you exactly when it's coming. We hope it is in the next few months. But first and foremost, as Dan mentioned, you have to get the WN4 receiver, and that should be broadly for sale here very soon. We've had reports from the folks at the parent company Navico that manufacture the WN4, that are responsible for selling it, that it should be for sale here in the next couple weeks.